I don't know anyone that's wealthy from Airbnb arbitrage or house hacking.
Okay.
Even people that are like buying a house, living in it for 2 years, they think they're being savvy because bigger pockets say they are. I don't know one person's wealthy. When you own a house, and if your net spread off the mortgage is say $200, your AC goes out and it's $6,000, you've
Yeah.
lost years of cash flow. I own Starbucks, Chipotle's, AT&T's, T-Mobile's. I own like, a lot of corporate tenants in my buildings, and I was getting letters from Chipotle saying we're not paying rent, and you're not going to fight Chipotle in court because you're not going to win. One of the biggest companies in the world, and they'll drag it out for 40 years before they make you pay anything.
All right. Well, Jon Parker, welcome to the Millionaire's Mic. Wow, I can't talk already. It's a great start.
Making you nervous, okay?
Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to dive into your entire journey. I mean, we were talking real estate, but obviously we'll get into the nitty gritty on what exactly it is that you do in this space. So
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited.
yeah, of course, we're excited. So I guess to kick things off, let's kind of go down your journey. Like, how did you get here? What exactly is it that you're doing? Like, in a nutshell, what is your company?
Journey, okay. How deep do you want me to go on that?
As deep as possible.
Okay. So I guess I'm in like part two of, I would say, like professional career. I played professional hockey, so
Okay.
my whole youth growing up all hockey focused. Moved away to Canada during high school to pursue it.
Oh, wow.
'Cause I'm from California, so obviously not a huge hockey hotbed.
Okay.
Especially back then. Played pro for 5 years. Played in Canada, U.S. Also went overseas for a year. Played in Sweden. So that was like my first career.
Oh, wow.
During that time, kind of, I mean, especially as like a minor league player, I wasn't like making $100 million in the NHL, right? Which would have been really nice. I would have been probably just on the beach right now playing golf instead of doing this. But so during that time, I kind of knew that at some point my career was going to come to an end. And you kind of sense that as a player, especially as you get to like your third, fourth, fifth year. If you know if you're not going to make it big by then, you're kind of like on the back nine of your career because hockey, just like football, very short career span.
Okay.
So I started investing in real estate passively when I was playing, just trying to be smart with my money, buying rental properties. That's all I kind of really knew as far as real estate investing. And then that led me to when I did retire from hockey, the only thing I did know besides hockey was then real estate.
Okay.
So actually, initially, when I was thinking about transitioning, I was like, okay, I want to be in sports still, because that just naturally, I knew hockey, expert in hockey. So I was thinking, okay, I could go to back to school, kinesiology, and become a trainer, or maybe I'll do, maybe become an agent. Like, that was kind of my mindset. And then I realized that I didn't want to go back to school. And like saying you want to become an agent doesn't just happen. And just like most people, you think it's you become an agent. It's not that. Most agents that are in like the top levels are attorneys. So it's not like the TV shows where like someone knows someone like Turtle on Entourage. Like
Yeah.
you have to, or what's the pizza boy in
Okay.
Entourage. But no, so like that was okay. That wasn't probably the best choice. I didn't want to go back to school, especially and waste like 4 to 6 years of doing nothing because I was already 25. It's not like I was like 19 and had a ton of time. That was my mindset. So doubled down on real estate. I got a job, entry-level job in San Diego, moved back home in San Diego after I retired.
Okay.
And did that for about a year. I hated it, every second of it. Made like no money. I was making $2,000 a month base,
Okay.
W-2, and then I had like commission incentives.
You were an agent, or?
No, I was working so my first job, I was an account manager, a fancy word. Yeah, I was more of an analyst, but it was really account management, so I was fancier title, but essentially, I was cold calling like all day, like
Okay.
boiler room style, like you see in Wall Street, and I was there from like 7 in the morning until 8 p.m., just awful, miserable job, and I had hit, in order to make money, because I was making 24 grand a year salary, right? So San Diego, top 3 most expensive cities in the U.S., one of the most in the world. So 24 grand, you're living in a box, right? Shoe box on the street. So I had to really hit my numbers. So I was there like all day, just killing myself, just to make enough to cover rent, basically. But that was the only job that was, coming from hockey. I didn't have a degree. I didn't really have any past experience besides like buying a couple rental properties. So that was like the only job that really had stability, because I could have became an agent and try to do it that route, but I wanted to have some type of recurring income, especially like my first job ever really as an adult besides hockey. So I did that and hated it, and I went to essentially 4 or 5 months in, I went to my boss and said, hey, because I was already like the number one sales guy on like the whole company, and everyone else was
Okay.
10 years older than I was, and I had no experience in real estate. So I said, hey, I want a bigger comp plan, because I was making no money basically, and I think I was making like $200 or $300 per set appointment.
Oh, wow.
So like, on a good day, you make 3 or 4 and you get $1,000.
Yeah.
So like his thing was like, well, if you do really well, you can make 200 grand. That was like kind of like what they promise you.
Of course.
But I was, but you're only as good as your leads, right? I mean, you can be a great salesman, but if your leads are not great, like they're, I was cold calling most of them. Some of them were warm leads, but I was number one in the company, and I think I was on pace to maybe make 100 best case. And 100 grand in San Diego is like making 35 in Tampa, right? Just to
Right.
give you perspective. So it's not as fancy. And I didn't really have any savings, so it was kind of like as I would come in, I would spend it, right? So I went to him, I talked to him and said, hey, look, I want to raise. I want more money for set appointments and converted appointments. And I'm already killing all your guys, and I'm only 4 or 5 months into this. Like, that was my angle at it. And he said, no, this is an entry-level job. If I do that for you, then I have to do that for everyone, like the whole,
Oh,
So
you're not special.
yeah, yeah. But it's funny because like I knew how much I was making him by converting those people. So I'm like, this guy is just being chintzy. But I didn't understand at that time because I never ran a business before. I didn't understand overhead, and he had huge payroll, rent, insurance, marketing, everything. Right. I was just thinking about myself at the time. So left his company, went to another entry level position that had a little bit higher base, less upside. But again, I was thinking more so stability at that time. I was in a very weird transition period in my life where I cared more about just like being able to cover the bills and like figure it out later.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I'm sure I would have probably been better if I went to a 100% commission job and did it that way. But at that time, it was just what, I needed to have some type of stability. So went to that job and was there for 6 months, so a year total between both jobs. And by the end of it, I was like, what am I even doing? Like, I think I finally had this like come to moment, like, okay, I wanted stability, I have it now, but what am I doing now? Like, now I'm gonna just be flatline forever. I was already hitting my quota on both jobs. There was no more upside. And again, I don't have a degree, so it's not like I could leave that job and then go apply at Goldman Sachs and like, right? So like, it would have to be me staying at that same job a year and a half later to get a raise, and like, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be in like the hamster wheel of 9 to 5 and like wait till you're 40 until you have a big payday.
Right.
So I just had, at that point now I wasn't broke necessarily. I had some savings at the end of that 1 year mark. So I quit and started my own company
Okay.
formally. Like I said, I already had like my own company with my rental properties, but I wasn't like advertising or marketing it as a company, right? Because I just,
Right.
but I went full time in within that after that first year of I guess entry level job. So that was 2015, 2016 in that range.
Okay.
And then from that point, the next, I would say 3 to 4 years, I was kind of the like evolution of what that meant, right? So in the beginning, all I knew was rental properties. So I was buying houses. The problem is when you buy rental properties, doesn't matter if it's a house or a high rise. If you're buying stabilized assets, meaning that it was already renovated, already had tenants in place, which is what I was buying because I thought it was smarter buying something that was less work, less liability.
Right.
But I realized is that once you buy it, and you spend your money, you're out of money because there's no way. Like it's not like there's no income generated. Yeah, you get some cash flow, but it's really
Like
minuscule.
$100 or
I
something.
mean, yeah, especially in a house, right? It's
Right. Like
your
it's covering expenses in
your
the future.
best
essentially.
case. I think my first rental property, I was making $200 a net spread after every month, right? So like, yeah, you're paying your phone bill, right?
Yeah.
So it was, but that's all I knew. So I would like I thought I was being savvy. Like I'd buy a house, go broke for 6 months, save up money, buy another house, go broke, and I thought, okay, I was younger. And I was like, if I get to 10. Now it's like a second job. Like I was thinking so small, right? But again, I didn't grow up like in an investing family or a real estate family, so that was. And also, I'm just old enough to be before social media and like influencers and podcasts things like that. So I didn't have like a Grant Cardone to like inspire me to be. Like back then, there like I don't think. I mean, Instagram was only 3 years old maybe at that time. There was nothing.
Yeah.
It was totally different, right? And so yeah, it was more like trial and error type stuff. So after about a year of realizing like, okay, I can't do this because I have no money and the cash was not enough to cover my like bills. I need to figure out how to make like actual earned income off of real estate. So during that 3 year window, just trying different things. So I stayed in residential for a while, and I would buy like distressed residential. And the idea was, okay, I'm going to renovate it a little bit, get it in higher paying rent, and then I would do the cash out refi. That was like the next evolution from buying a house and sitting on it. Did that for a while.
Wait,
Yeah,
sorry.
go
I
ahead.
don't mean to, can
Yeah.
you, just for anyone who doesn't know, like, what that process is, can you just kind of explain
I
in
mean,
layman's terms?
on a high level, you are buying something that's underperforming, and it could be due to it maybe being distressed, meaning that's not in a great condition. It could be due to poor management, or it can just be, sometimes you find owners that have owned it forever and they're elderly and they just don't know any better and they're just under, the rents are just below, right? That's
Right.
best case scenario. You buy it and you just jack up the rent the next month.
Yeah.
And if that happens, I've bought properties that all I had to do was literally just give a notice, 60-day notice, and I was done.
Okay.
But essentially, you go in there, you improve whatever's needed to be improved. So it's either renovations or hands-on management, or simply just getting a new tenant or lease in there. Once you have the new rent amount, when you go to, I guess, refinance in this case, you would, even though it's residential, it's not the same as commercial, but the appraiser is supposed to take in the fact of the cash flow, and that would help you have a higher value. And so if you buy it at 100 and you improve it, and hopefully you go to refinance and it's worth 200, you could pull out that new equity or up to 70% of it, whatever your leverage is. So in theory, if you put in low leverage in the beginning, or excuse me, you have high leverage, you put in low amount, and you can get max leverage on the refinance. A lot of times you can get your initial investment back.
Okay.
So you're not necessarily making income off it, but it allows you to reinvest the original capital over and over again. And then at some point with appreciation, those assets that you did that with 3 to 5 years later, you could start selling or do another cash flow refi. And now that money is spendable money, even though it's not a taxable event, it's not income. You can still use that for wherever you want, right? So that's the model that I got into. Because I wanted to acquire assets, right? If I were to do that and then sell every time, you could do that route as well. But at that time, I thought, okay, if I do this, I'm pulling out my initial investment, and by the time I'm 30 or 40, I'll have X amount of properties. That was kind of the mindset. So I did that for about a year and realized that's still too slow moving, thinking too small. Really, besides a few, institutions and REITs, no one's ever gotten rich off a single family.
Right.
I can challenge you or any of your listeners to find one billionaire that made it from buying houses. There's zero. There's factually, there's no one. So.
Yeah.
Unless your great uncle that's worth $1 billion leaves you $1 billion that you can buy into $1 billion of houses at once, the speed that you can acquire assets, you'd be dead by the time you're rich, right?
Right.
So that led me into the value add space. So now I was familiar with the model of buying distressed and then improving and then restabilizing with a new tenant and then going to the bank or market. So I started buying apartment complexes. So that was like the evolution of that. Started really small. My first commercial building was 8 units.
Okay. So like a really tiny.
Yeah, it was 4 and 4. It was actually 2 structures. It was one parcel, so it's still considered a commercial. One 4 and 4 on the same lot, but it was essentially 2 fourplexes next to each other in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Anything over 4, so 5 or more is commercial. So you have to get a commercial loan, different process. Getting approved for a loan on a house, doesn't matter if it's for investment property or your primary, it's mainly about your income, your credit score, your DTI, all those kind of things like that, what I was familiar with from 2013 until 2018 when I was only buying residential. That's all I was. You bring your tax returns, your W-2s.
Yep.
And then what I realized in the commercial, and this was the first, these are things you get to learn on your own, is it's not about any of that in commercial. Commercial is the asset first, how is it performing, what's it doing now, what's the projection of it, and then how strong is the operator, the sponsor. So the sponsor is basically who's guaranteeing the loan. So they would actually rather have someone that's almost broke and has like a credit score of 500, but has done it 20 times, running the property, running the investment for the bank, protecting their loan, versus someone that has 800 credit score and makes $300,000 a year as a doctor, but has never managed commercial real estate. So
interesting.
it was tricky because I had all these years of experience of rental properties, and they're like, it was tough. My broker, my mortgage broker was like, none of these banks want to give you a loan because you never have managed not only have you never managed a apartment complex, you never managed one that's out of state, because I was in San Diego. So it's even more, there's more complexities to that. So I eventually got a loan, and I bought it for like 60-ish grand per door. So like just around 500,000 total.
That's not bad actually for like a fourplex.
2017, 18, Las Vegas in the ghetto.
Okay.
So part of it too is like, keep in mind I'm still, I'm only 26, 27 this time, and I don't have a ton of money, right? So I'm pretty much figuring out how can I hack the system here where I'm still getting into the next level of real estate, like upping the game, but not like still be able to afford it, right?
Right.
So I'm from San Diego.
Really quickly,
Yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead.
So if you, just so people kind of understand how this like commercial loan process works, if you didn't really have a ton of capital, how are you able to then get a loan for what is like a property worth $500,000. Like, how do you end up qualifying that?
Well,
aside
you need to
from-
have the money. I mean, yeah, that's it pays to play, right? No matter
Right.
what you're doing. So I think a lot of it too is like nowadays clickbait's like everyone's trying to sell you something like you don't need to have money. Like you do. I mean, the reality is someone has to have money.
Yeah.
I don't care if you partner with someone or you bring in 10 buddies, unless you are filing what's his name, Pace Morby, where you're I don't know his name, where you're pretty much calling old ladies and that are about to die and say, hey, I'll take over your mortgage. So subject to, yeah, that does work, and it requires less money. Usually to pay them, usually to buy them off a little bit. But I don't see that as really savvy investing. I think it's a way to hack maybe, but you're taking on someone else's liability.
Yeah.
And usually they're underwater for a reason. And not say so, not to get into the woods of that, but I would say 9 out of 10 deals that I've seen that were like, oh, I signed loan or subject to, they're usually stuck with a really shitty investment, and they think they're being savvy because it was zero out of pocket. It's like kind of like the Airbnb arbitrage. Like you're just signing a bunch of leases that like are still under your name, your credit score. If you have, you're taking on liability thinking that you're gonna be savvy because it's less on money. So I think that I'd rather you partner with 15 friends and have like 2% equity and actually own it and have your money in it and do it that way. So you're picking actual good investments versus like trying to be like, how do I just say I'm a real estate investor by doing this hack? So that's my opinion. Maybe I'm a little old school. But
I'm glad you said that.
I don't know anyone that's I don't know anyone that's wealthy from Airbnb arbitrage or house hacking.
Okay.
Even people that are like buying a house, living in it for 2 years, they think they're being savvy because bigger pockets say they are. I don't know one person that's wealthy. You might say you're well off and you acquire 2-3 homes over the years, but like I don't see that as like being like a sophisticated investor. I think that's just like someone thinking that they're doing something better than just going to the buying it with a purse or going to meat market or whatever. Like sure, you're smart with your money, but it's not really a savvy investment. But yeah, so you need to have money.
Okay.
So at that time, let's say it was $100,000 that you needed for a down payment. I had that. So
Okay.
I was selling houses that I had prior, built or bought from 2013 until then, and I had that light bulb moment of okay, I'm out of residential, so I started to sell my houses, and I used that money for the first investment, and I bought it for around $60,000 a door, and I spent probably $5,000 to $8,000 per unit,
Okay.
raised rents, and I sold it probably a little less than a year for like $85,000 a door.
Okay.
So probably only a net profit of like $10,000 per door. So not $80,000. It's not a big profit, but it's the model. So that's a very scalable model. You can do that for a 300 unit apartment complex. So it's more of an eye opener. Okay, now I know what I'm doing. I've proved to do it. It's worked. And worst case on that property, I would have just kept it in cash flow. So like when you own a apartment complex, the difference is that there's no hurry to sell because when you own a house and a tenant moves out, you go from 100% occupied to zero. And if your net spread off the mortgage is say $200, your AC goes out and it's $6,000, you've lost years of cash flow. Your roof goes out, you've lost 5 years of cash flow. There's not much downside protection when you own a house. Even if you own 14 houses on the same street, it's still 14 different problems.
Yep.
When you own an apartment complex, especially as you get into like 30, 40, 50 units plus, you have a lot more insurance, I call it, because I can have a tenant move out, 5 of them in the same month, and I don't like even notice, right? Because I have cash from the other units that are offsetting it. Same thing with capital expenditures for, windows, roofs, ACs, things like that. So you don't have a gun to your head to sell. Like when I had that 8 units, when I stabilized it and got it fully leased, I wanted to sell it for profit and take that money because I wanted to keep buying bigger deals. That was the mindset. I didn't want to really hold on to it. But there was no rush because while I was waiting to sell, I think on that one I was making around $4,000 a month net cash flow. Which $48,000 a year for one property, $100,000.
It's not bad.
Yeah, so my IRR was really strong on that. Because think about that, that'd be 48% return.
Yeah.
On my $100,000 that I put down payment. So
It's a pretty good return.
you don't find that anymore.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I actually wish I would have kept everything I bought in Las Vegas. Las Vegas ended up being the hottest market in the U.S. for like the next decade, basically.
Okay.
But you don't know that when you're,
Yeah.
it's all hindsight. So
If everyone had a crystal ball, we'd all be billionaires.
yeah, everyone, right? So that was the first taste of commercial, 2017, 18. And then from that point on, I just like exploded on that. So like started buying shopping centers. As I started buying more and more and bigger deals, I ended up having more proof of concept. Therefore, I was able to now pitch this to other investors and raise capital and say, hey, I've done this for the last X amount of years. Here's my average return. This is like my buy box and risk tolerance, and that's kind of how the evolution of what I would say is what I kind of do now is very similar.
Okay.
But that was up until 2020, and then everything COVID happens, right? So you think you figured it out. At that point, I was playing golf 3 or 4 times a week. Like I had figured out a way to do bigger and bigger deals, and when you do bigger deals, it's actually less work. So
Yeah.
people like are confused by this, like, oh, buying a, they can afford a car. Let's say they can afford an 8 unit, right? Like, oh, it's too scary, it's too big. They would just go buy 8 houses. It's actually the opposite. As you buy bigger and bigger assets, you have more money coming in. Therefore, you have more leverage to hire out and outsource work. So, like when I have an apartment complex I buy, I can day one hire a full-time property manager, full-time maintenance manager, full-time bookkeeper assigned to those properties. Versus, when you're buying a house, you have to be all those hats because if you outsource all that, you'd be in the red
Yeah.
instantly, right?
Of course.
So I was at the point where I was buying big enough deals and exiting it, frequently enough to have lump sums coming in where I didn't, like, I was literally playing golf half the week, right? I was in San Diego.
Wow.
I was traveling a lot. Like, I thought had figured out this, like, model that I could just keep growing and do forever. When COVID hit, everything came tumbling down because most of my portfolio was probably about 8% multifamily and 20% retail, so like shopping centers. And federal level did eviction freeze, so we couldn't make anyone pay rent. We couldn't kick them out, and every business in the U.S., especially in the beginning, closed down.
Yeah.
And some markets stayed closed down for about a year.
Yeah.
New York, California. So I had our retail tenants not paying rent, but our banks and insurance companies and property taxes all due.
Oh
So we
my
had that every
God.
month, and then my apartment complexes mainly buy affordable housing, so like Class C. So a lot of lower income, and the reason why is I do a lot of aggressive investments, and having affordable housing is probably one of the least sexy, but also one of the most stable historically.
Yeah.
Because there's always a place that someone needs to live. So when you buy like a Class A high rise with a rooftop pool, when there's downturns, people stop spending it and they move down to Class B. Class B moves into Class C, but there's nothing below Class C.
Yeah.
Formally,
Okay.
right? So it's more of those
That makes
safety
sense.
net, right? The problem is when McDonald's and Burger Kings and all these places close down, those people don't have savings accounts, right?
Yeah.
So besides the Section 8, which was paid for by the government, which I have a lot of that as well, all the market renters in those affordable housing, they're like, I'm not paying rent. They don't have any money. So I was burning probably in the first few months of COVID, I was probably losing like 200 to 300 grand a month because
Whoa.
I had all my bills for all my mortgages, and I own a lot of real estate. So I'm like, okay, I have a short period of time here before I am broke.
Yeah.
And I am also a fiduciary responsible for other people's investments in these properties, and we couldn't do anything about it. Like I own Starbucks, Chipotle's, AT&T's, T-Mobile's. I own like a lot of corporate tenants in my buildings, and I was getting letters from Chipotle saying we're not paying rent, and you're not going to fight Chipotle in court because
Right.
you're not going to win.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest companies in the world, and they'll drag it out for 40 years before they make you pay
And
anything. So
you're doing well, but you're the small guy
No,
compared to
yeah.
Chipotle.
and even then too, like in the commercial world, you're dealing with BlackRock and Goldman Sachs
Yeah.
and J.P. Morgan for your lenders and Freddie Mac, and you like threatening, hey, I'm not gonna pay my mortgage, doesn't work against those guys.
No.
It's not like I'm going to some credit union down the street in Tampa where like you're friends with like the president of the bank and you play golf with them, right? In hindsight, it would have been nice to have some of those, but all of our debt was bigger banks and institutions, which gives at the time gave better terms than going with a small bank.
Yeah.
But and then hindsight backfired.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a weird period. I went from I guess at that time I was 28 and already a multimillionaire.
Wow.
Already, like I said, my lifestyle was great.
That's impressive. Like,
Yeah, well,
I mean, I know
yeah.
you're gonna get to like the the crazy.
I'm still
stuff, but-
I'm still like halfway through my story, but yeah, I'm trying to give you the whole context, and you can edit half of this. But
No, this is great.
so like I thought everything was figured out, right? And then my net worth was going down, pretty much $1 million in the first 4 or 5 months of COVID, and I figured if I didn't do anything on like aggressively, I would pretty much just lose it all, right? Because at that point there was no end in sight of COVID. We didn't know how long it's gonna last. So again, some markets like California, I was still at that point, like in April, May, June, which was already a few months into COVID. San Diego was still on 23-hour lockdown. We had 10 p.m. curfew. Like nothing was changing, right? So who knows? Like, at that time, it could have been 3 years, which California ended up being about 2 years before it really opened up. So it was
Yeah.
kind of right.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, my background's in residential. The number one performing sector within real estate was residential because commercial was getting bent over because of the businesses being closed and eviction freezes. And I researched at the time, April, May, kind of from my computer, what markets were open as far as the central. Because, for example, construction was closed down in California. Like, so if you're doing a flip or development, you couldn't go to your site.
Wow.
So there was Nevada, the Carolinas, parts of Arizona based on what county you're in, and then Florida. Texas as well. I own real estate in Texas. I've owned real estate in Nevada. So I was kind of like figuring out what I thought would be the best market trend, and it was pretty clear that the majority of my migration was going to Florida, Florida and the Carolinas. But then I looked at the Carolinas and Florida. I felt like Florida had more upside, not only for a short bump but also long term. Because my thing is I wanted to capitalize on it, but also I wanted like 6 months later, then everyone's like, okay, now it's done, right? And not to say the Carolinas don't have anything going on for it. To me, it's a secondary market. It's not really a place that people are striving. There's no job growth there. Like, people are not moving there from New York City to go work. Like, it's more of a secondary market for a vacation home or go play golf. So I felt like Florida was the clear winner within just like picking a market. And then I started buying houses from my computer at live auction, because the auctions for foreclosures went to computers because of COVID.
Yeah.
So usually you have to go the court steps, and you have like it's even to this day, like you go there like, and you bid, and if you win, you have to put a deposit down that day, and then you have to come back the next day with the full lump sum, or otherwise it goes back to the auction. But because they went to computer, like now I can bid in I can bid in Miami and Tampa without having to drive each place. And on top of that, they were able to extend the amount of time needed for money, because I knew that you're not able to just come with a cashier's check.
Right.
So it really fell into my favor, because I had money, but like I needed to figure out like that having the cash the next day is a little bit different than having a few weeks to figure it out the cash, right?
Right.
So I bought 6 houses in about a week span. Once I committed, I just said, screw it, I'm gonna do it. So I bought 6 houses. I had never been to Florida before, besides a kid.
Okay. Wow.
So I knew nothing about the
You're
markets.
blind going in.
So I am strictly underwriting based on just my background in underwriting analysis of markets, but knew nothing about the neighborhoods. Like, for all I knew, I was buying a house next to a crack den, right? I didn't know.
Like that's crazy.
Yeah, and I had no friends. I had no realtor friends here, so it's not like I had like someone that was like going there and FaceTiming me.
Or like, don't buy on this street, or like,
nothing.
oh, you don't want
So
that one.
I was really trusting the numbers, and it worked out for thankfully in the beginning. So what I did is I bought all 6, and I would fly out, rent a car, and I would stop at all the houses and interview contractors in that area. And I was getting them off of like Angie's List, Craigslist, Thumbtack, Facebook, because I didn't have any connections here. It's not like I had like a sphere of contractors, and I was buying distressed real estate, and I didn't want them to know that I was not there, because based on my background in real estate, I knew that if a contractor knows that you're not around all the time, they take advantage of you.
Of course.
So I made it clear that I lived in the market, and stop by every so often, and kind of made it like nonchalant to keep them on their toes. And I would fly back 12 days later, stop without even telling them, stop on unannounced. That day they thought I would be just coming and going throughout the project. I did that for 2 months. So pretty much end of April, May, June, I would go back and forth for about a week at a time, seeing to go to various markets in Florida. And by the time we were kind of finishing those projects, about 4 to 6 week projects, I picked lighter cosmetic flips just to kind of beta test, so I could be on the market in a fast period. All of them were just like, this is back in early 2020 when the market here was crazy. So like,
Yeah.
if I underwrote the house to be worth $400,000, by the time we finished it and went on market, we were selling it for $500 because we'd get 20 offers.
Yep.
So all 6 houses just like killed it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like,
Yeah.
that was the best time to buy real estate in Florida.
People were scared back then. I was buying them. Literally, I was buying houses in. I guess if I moved out here in July, I was buying them in April, May, and the world was still kind of ending at that point.
So smart.
Yeah. So I wish I bought more at that time, but nonetheless, by the time they were all kind of selling and making money, or going pending, I should say, under contract, San Diego was still locked down. So you know what? I said, screw it. So I flew back my last time, late June, packed up my car, took my dog, and I flew back here, and I moved to Florida. And I always thought it was going to be like short term, but I figured I might as well just be here full time, double down on the market that's doing well, and at some point go back to San Diego. That was kind of like my mindset, which never ended up happening. I'm still here, obviously. But so I got into the next 2-3 years of just strictly mainly flipping, got into ground up development because that was also in demand here in Tampa area, and then kind of put all my commercial stuff on pause. I was still buying apartment complexes here and there, more so just for tax benefits, because when you make money on flips in development, there's no tax, you have no deductions really. It's
Okay.
taxed as ordinary income at the, and I'm at the highest tax bracket. So I need to have some paper losses each year. So I'd buy an apartment complex mainly for that, because I'm not a big believer in buying properties anymore. And we talked about this before the podcast started. I buy more now as strategy more so than actually making money, because I think there's better ways to do it. But then the evolution of that, the market, 2023, worst real estate market since '08, factually, even in Florida, unfortunately. So I completely changed my business model. I stopped flipping, stopped building homes, and that's what I'm doing now, which I can now, I guess, segue into. But yeah,
Yeah.
so there's about a decade into, I guess, probably 20 minutes at this point. But
But it's great though. I'm glad that you like kind of checked through everything because when you hear real estate, there's so many different brackets that you can fall into. So it's nice to know that you kind of like navigated through each of these and you were like tried it, tested it, worked, didn't work, whatever.
that's the only way I know, because again, I didn't grow up in an investing type family, so like I didn't have any mentors in that space. Again, I'm just quite old enough to not have any like social media influence in the beginning. So trial and error, which I think the best way to learn anything, doesn't matter if it was from hockey or real estate, is doing it and then figuring out what didn't work, what did work, double down on what did work, learn your lesson from the items that didn't go as well. But I feel like a lot of people are, they're waiting for someone to tell them what to do, or they have to like read it. Until you actually do it, I know the smartest people in the world that could read a book inside and out and tell you everything about real estate and finance, but have never actually done a deal themselves, right?
Yeah.
So I'm more the opposite, just go for it, do it.
I love that because I'm the same way too. I'm like, I could read all about it, but I will learn the most by actually going through and doing these things and seeing what works for me. Because maybe what worked out well for you is like not ultimately what I want to do, or it's not working out for me, but maybe there's another niche that you don't like that works for me.
Yep,
So,
exactly.
but we'll get into like, so what are
Yeah.
you up to now in terms of your
Yep.
real estate,
So
not real estate business?
Yeah, so 2023 really was like, it kicked my butt. Like, it was just really stressful because I was used to, I mean, frankly, I had never lost money. So from 2013 until 2023, so 10-year streak of only making money on deals and being used to that winning, again, never had a losing deal. And then also 2023 happened and the market completely shifted. Rates doubled pretty much overnight.
Yeah.
The end of 2022 and 2023. And a lot of the flips that we had bought or new construction we bought at the top, by the time they are finishing, were now, in a softer evaluation. So, I pretty much went on pause on buying deals in 2023. I sold off the ones that I already had, and just trying to figure out what I was going to do, I guess, in 2024. Because I figured if rates start dropping again, then great. I'll go back to what I was doing, and development was mainly the main focus towards the end of that 2022, 2023, just like building luxury spec. But the rates never came down. So, and I'm not going to wait forever. And
Yeah.
it's perfect example is 2025, and rates are still just as high.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of, okay, what am I good at? What do I enjoy? Because I literally haven't had to start a real estate business in many years, right? So it's like I'm starting from scratch. I can choose whatever I want. I can do what, so let's figure out what I actually like and think that's scalable. So what I came to conclude is that another light bulb moment is I thought I was being really smart all those years buying apartment complexes and buying shopping centers and using that as a hedge against my active projects like the flips and development. So I thought I was okay. I have a riskier investment here in the development. I can make 500 grand or I can lose 500 grand. But then I also have assets behind me that I could always sell if I need to or pull money out of if there was a downturn. So I thought I was being savvy. And again, it goes back to like not knowing who to like believe, and you can read like one person has an opinion, another expert has another opinion. And I was just trying to like navigate through that. But I realized is that not to say that like what I'm going to do now isn't equate to just being a multi-billionaire. But if you look at, you study billionaires, like you always want to study who is at the top, right? So when I was playing hockey as a kid, it was always, Gretzky and, guys like Crosby. These guys, they're the best in the world. Just like you play basketball, you look up to Kobe and Michael Jordan. Why look up to the guy that's like second string, right? Mm-hmm. So in real estate, same thing. I'm like, okay, why am I like reading advice from bigger pockets when these guys are literally is worth less than me in most cases, but they're like good on the microphone.
Right.
Or looking at even guys like, Grant Cardone, his advice benefits him, not,
Yes.
Right? So like, these are things that like are kind of like, I'm just, too much information sometimes it can do the opposite. So I thought deeply of like, okay, what's actually like, what do I want to do in life, right? And all the billionaires in the world are not rich from real estate. There's like a big, like, you always hear like all the billionaires have real estate and but they're not rich from real estate. Once you're rich, you can buy real estate and you can have it as asset protection. So I think real estate's still great for asset protection and tax benefits, but not for building wealth in a fast fashion. So,
Wow.
and I it's funny because this is controversial, but if you like, I'm literally, put a question on your podcast. There's not one person that I can think of that's, at least in the media, that's well known that made their money from real estate.
I'm so glad you said that though, because exactly what you said. Everything I feel like on social media, every podcast, everyone's like, oh, well, you see all these rich people, like it's because they have real estate. So I think the conception is, oh, if you want to build wealth, it's through real estate. And here you are being like, that's not true.
I mean, being that I'm wealthier and in real estate, I know a lot of real estate friends that are also wealthy and some that are way richer than I am. And not one is from buying investment properties.
Wow. Okay.
They might be in real estate business. I'm in a real estate business, but it's not investing. The big key difference. And I think people kind of confuse it too. Like people are like, oh, I flip homes. I own a real estate business. I'm an investor, or I own shopping centers, and they think that's a business model. All you're doing is buying stuff. It's like buying stuff a job, right? So like, there's no. I guess the best way to explain it, like a business versus like investing, is I flip 40 homes a year. The minute I stop flipping homes, the money stops coming in. Or the minute I want to remove myself, and I can't sell anything. There's nothing to sell to another company or investor, right? Versus a business, the idea is that you're building fundamentals and protocols and structures that are going to be on autopilot, and therefore you could remove yourself, or you could duplicate it. Therefore, a company would actually want to buy it.
Okay.
But like a flip, all a flip is on a balance sheet is liability until you sell it, right? So no business wants to take on 20 active flips that are liabilities. There's no value in it, right? But if I have a business that has cash flow that's not linked to a liability that can be duplicated in multiple markets or scaled or whatever it may be, now you're worth something. So going back to people that are billionaires and people that are very, very wealthy, most of them have built a business or created a business and sold it, and at some point they got in real estate.
Okay.
And that's, again, you can look it up. It's just facts. Like that's why it's like, for me, I'm very like black and white transparent. Like you can listen to every podcast guru in the world, but like ask them how they got their money.
Yeah.
People that are like it. So, for example, even like Grant. So Grant is probably the most famous person on social media that's real estate related. I think everyone will agree with that.
Yeah.
Because it's not really sexy. It's not a sexy thing like to follow real estate people. So there's not many like celebrity real estate people.
Yes.
But he made his money not from real estate. Yeah, you can say he got wealthy, added to his wealth from real estate. He makes his money from his Cardone Enterprise business, which is sales, coaching, marketing. He makes his money from capital raising and fees. The third list of that where he makes his money is from real estate. But number 1 and 2 is what made him rich.
Yeah.
And he's even talked about it. Like he went from he owned I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 buildings and then he like started doing capital raising.
Yep.
And then that's where he's went from like 400 units to 5,000 because of that.
Yeah.
And he's making his money on the fees. So even people that you think got rich from real estate that say they got rich from real estate, usually not the case if you deep dive into it. So that was kind of the light bulb moment. I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to take my skills from real estate investing, but actually build a real business and not just call myself a business. Because I thought I was a business owner all those years, but really not, right? Because the minute in 2023 when I stopped flipping and building, I went to zero, right?
Yeah.
There was no residual income coming in. There was no, I couldn't go to a bank and get a line of credit based on valuation because there was nothing, I wasn't buying anything. So I decided to get more into consulting, project management, and private equity. So syndication, but more so kind of what Grant does, where it's fees based. Like he's finding good deals, he's raising the capital and placing fees on it, and not necessarily having to participate in the investment. So all things I was already kind of doing for myself, but now retail focused and public facing. And now for that, it's funny because even though I'm doing very similar things I was doing for myself, now it's so much more scalable because I can only do so many deals myself within my capacity, my money. Like once I'm out of money, I can't buy more deals, right? Once all my, mentally, if I'm, trying to wear every different hat as a real estate investor, I'm at capacity, then you stop, right? This type of business, if I get to the point where I'm at capacity, I can hire more trained people that are consultants that have my background or my experience that take on more clients. If I have, too many projects at once, guess what? I just hire more contractors. Like it's a easier problem to solve, and therefore, if I were ever go to sell this business, it's a lot more like from whoever wants to buy like a private equity company that would buy this company, they can see this. Okay, we can move this to Dallas, we can move this to Austin, we can move this to San Diego, and not have to have John involved, right?
Yeah.
That's the big thing about small business owners, that the minute the owner removes himself, everything goes to shit. And perfect example of this is I was looking at other businesses when I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do and like underwriting to see what was me like the most profitable path. And like I was actually looking at buying pool cleaning companies, like service companies.
Okay.
So I was in Miami and I was like, okay, this guy has 500 homes on his route, and that's a lot. You think he was making like $6 million a year as a pool company,
Yeah.
pool cleaning.
Yeah.
But
simple, but
this guy's been around for 30 years. He's the face of the company, and he probably knows all the kids by now and the families, and like I know if I bought this, half the families would probably go somewhere else because they only stayed because of Jim.
Yeah.
So like that's a perfect example of someone that can make a lot of money. The minute he retires, it's probably not worth anything. So that was kind of the light bulb moment, and what I'm doing now is it's consulting, project management, syndication services, which is pretty much just fancy word for raising capital for
Okay.
larger endeavors. And then also we just added a custom homes division. So going back to retail facing, I've only done all those years of just spec development, where it's pretty much you're buying it based on valuation, and then at the very end you're hoping to sell for whatever you underwrote it for. Versus custom homes is a client's coming to you and telling them what your budget is, and you say yes to it, and then you're locked in. So you already have your profit margin locked in from day one, so it takes a lot of the risk out of it.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's really interesting. And then I guess when you're talking about consulting,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean by that? Because you cover kind of like what the syndication aspect is,
Yep.
but what is
So
consulting?
consulting is, so there's a lot, like I've done every type of investment you can think of in real estate for the most part, big, small, residential, commercial, different asset, mixed use, retail, shopping, multifamily, industrial. I've done rezonings, I've done PDs, like all different things that I've done myself that now I can talk to and consult and coach someone that's wanting to go through that process, right? So a lot of newer investors, either first-time investors or greenish investors that maybe are they've done a house flip, but then now they want to do a development, or maybe they've done development and they want to do commercial, and there's things they don't know, right? So instead of having to learn on their own dime and make mistakes that are really expensive, they could hire our firm and say, hey, look, I'm looking to buy this and rezone it to this land use. How do I do that? And they would
Okay.
pay us to help them guide through that. So it's kind of like paid advice and not having to go through it by yourself, basically.
Kind of like teaching a man to fish instead of,
Exactly.
instead of getting
Sitting
him to
there for
fish.
8 hours not catching anything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Wait, that's really smart though, because like what you said in terms of scaling, and then even if people want to replicate this, like they could easily purchase this business model from you and then replicate it in the other markets.
It's a book of business, right? So like a lot of times clients sign on to contracts and retainers. So there's predictable income coming in. So again, going back to business, when you go to value a business, if you don't have recurring income and contracts in place, the minute you leave or stop, your money goes to zero. Therefore, you can't sell it, right?
Yeah.
If I have, let's say, a development firm that is, does a 2-year contract with us to consult on various things within their company, and they sign a $300,000 contract, right? That's locked in predictable income. So you do that times 10 people, plus you have other divisions that are making money. You just have more things going on that, again, I can remove myself. And also the goal for those, every division at some point's going to have a president, right? So in theory, I can be retired and still own the company, right? I can do what I want and still be involved, but I don't have to be, right? Versus when you flip a home or you're buying an apartment complex, you're doing development, unless it's like large scale, high rises, like you have to be involved because there's not enough money coming in from those individual projects to be hands off, and also the margins are so thin, right? So flips are, you're babysitting the deal from the door handles to flooring, like every dollar counts.
Yeah.
So if you're not on it, you're trusting other people, a lot of times you're gonna probably lose money too. So part of that is I want to build something that is scalable and also buys back my time.
Yeah, that's really smart because even as I'm kind of going down my own real estate journey, I've been talking to him also about this, and I'm like, there's so many different areas, but it's like if you're not on top of things all the time, then you end up losing money, or you end up losing out on the deal, or things just go to shit kind of.
Yep.
And then you're like, what was even the point of this? And if you're not actively, I don't want to be actively always doing things all the time. Like I want to
Yeah.
be like, we can be in Italy or something and still be making money, And
I always say when you're in real estate investing, especially like on a small scale, all you do is you're buying yourself a job. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is. I mean, you can brag to your friends that I own real estate and you're an investor and whatever you want to do it. Like, I know people in Tampa that like claim that they're real estate people and they have courses or masterminds, and like they're not. Like it's like when you are, I guess, I'm not saying like I'm not doing this to my tap my shoulder, but it's like when you get at a certain level, like you can kind of sniff out bullshit. And just because you build 3 or 4 homes a year or you do a few flips a year does not mean that you figured it out, right? And I think I went through that phase, right? I was that guy
Yeah.
that was built. I was at the point where I was doing 40 projects a year, 40 flips a year, and I thought I was like, okay, this is it. I'm making, I think that my best year in 2021 of the flips, I made $5 million in that one year.
Wow.
So I'm like, why would I change anything, right?
Yeah.
But again, thinking too small, like, not to say that the money's
It's crazy, like $5 million
No,
too
but like,
small.
I realized is that like you can have a year that you make 5 million, but also like I had no life. Like I made 5 million because of me. Like I had to be involved in everything. I was interior designer. I was the project manager. I was doing all these different things that are just like it was just made no sense. And also too is like what I realized is that the next year that became a softer year, which was 2022, it eventually led to the worst year, which was 2023. I was doing the same amount of work, if not more, and now making no money or less money or losing money.
Right.
So it was like you're in a hamster wheel, and sometimes like you're gonna have good years, but like I just felt like it's gonna be like this for life. Like what am I building, right? Because I think for me the idea of wealth is buying back time. I say this all the time for everyone. Like I hire people, like you hire so many people. Like they feel like I'm almost like spending. I really spend all my money that I make in the early years and make zero money, but do no work.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like it doesn't actually work that way. But like when I bring in money, my first thought is how do I hire someone else to add to the company and take off an hour or 2 hours a day off my plate. And it happens slowly. But like for me, the more I can free up my plate, and even though if I'm making less money, I can now think bigger, right?
Yeah.
And every year that I've added more people, I've been able to elevate my business or my mindset. It's because I have more free time, right? And you and I were talking about flying before this. I was in Brazil last week, and I had every problem hit me at once. And it was kind of like another eye opener. I was like, 'cause I had just fired my ops manager, and I was doing a lot of like work that I just don't. It's way below my pay grade, right? But I had to do it because no one else was going to step in and do it. And it was time sensitive, so it was more like a reconfirming of like, okay, this is why I do hire as many people that I do, and why I have people that are probably jobs that I could just do myself that I'm paying for no reason. Like I have 2 assistants, and people are like, why do you need 2?
Right.
Probably don't need 2, but like just there's certain things that like in hindsight I'm happy I have it, because for me, instead of thinking about okay the problem that happened today or next week or what's my next month going to look like, I can think of okay what's a year from now what do I want to be, and then what can I put into place every quarter, every month, and like work backwards from there. But you can't be in that mindset if you're putting out fires every single day, which I did from 2013 to 2023, and I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought it was normal. I thought I was just being a business owner, and I had to be on top of everything. And I realized 2023, I was like, this is not a way to grow and scale. I need to be removed from the day to day as much as possible. And of course, you just can't like flip a switch and do that. Like it's not like I have 300 staff, like right.
Yeah.
So like there is an element of it takes time, but I didn't pay myself all of 2022. Took 0 paychecks. 23 0 paychecks. 24 0 paychecks. I finally paid myself the first time in 3 years early this year, 2025.
Wow.
And thankfully I had savings enough. Like so, it's all perspective, right? Like
Yeah.
so, I didn't need the money necessarily, but I wasn't able to elevate my lifestyle during those 3 years. I just
Yep.
lived off my savings and my investments. But I used those 3 years to reinvest in my business and be able to be in a spot now where I have really good people around me in my company that I can rely on. That if I did spent that money as it came in, like most people do, that bring in money, then and that's why going back to what I was saying, circling back to why people that are like in Tampa that claim to be like this, person, they're a team of them and one VA from the Philippines. Like you're not a company. Like you think you're being, you're selling your knowledge, and you shouldn't be giving advice, probably, frankly. And you shouldn't be at least charging for it, give free advice, but you're not growing a company, right? You're a glorified, self-employed person. And those are things that I realized over the years that, I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to be able to grow my company and eventually step away, scale, sell.
Wow. I really love how you explain that, though, because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, who are maybe curious about real estate or like wanting to get into it, and we see those types of people that you were explaining. We're like, wow, oh, they just built a new house,
Killing
or
it.
they're killing it. Like, wow, they're making crazy money, and like you've lived this life, so it's not like you're just kind of saying this is whatever it is. Like exactly what that process is like. And I also really like how you explained, even though you've been in various phases of real estate throughout all of these years, you kind of were explaining this hamster wheel of like, you made all of this stuff and then the market changes and now you're back to to zero. Because I used to think, oh, you kind of start small and you build and you grow knowledge and you get all of these things and you just continue to kind of scale. And you do, but I like how you explain there are just some forces where like you run out of money or the market changes and you're kind of starting all the way back at zero again, even if you have all of this expertise.
I think too is like real estate has cycles, like any business model, right? There's gonna be good times and bad times, but the one thing too is when you're an investor, like you're gonna make money in good times, but what are you gonna do in bad times, right? You're just gonna lose. Like, here, my thing is, if you can build a business that's somewhat recession proof, which is, there's no guarantees of that. Like, it's if someone can figure that out, then there'd be no every company would be doing great, right?
Right.
But there are certain things you can do within a company, in service-based company, which I am now, that you can't do with strictly investing, right? So when you invest, the top of the market and it goes down, you you have to take a loss. It is what it is. You can't like make someone overpay because it's worth. It used to be worth this, but like, no one cares. It's
Yeah.
worth this now, right? But for a business, if things change, you're not over leveraged, right? So I guess the difference is that if I were to buy 10 lots and I have 10 projects going on and the market changes halfway through, I still have to finish those projects. My money's stuck in there. I have loans, I have investors, and you can't sell halfway finished, right? So you're stuck with a sinking ship if you like it or not. If you own a business, of course you have office rent and like various overhead, but you're not over. There's nothing to leverage. At least I think I'm not like leasing a Bugatti to wrap it, just right. So I don't have any like dumb
Yeah.
investments, right? So if I were to have to pull back, I would just pull back on things that I can control. Like, so maybe my advertising goes down a little bit. Maybe I'm not doing as many networking events and client sponsorships like that. But I don't have anything that's overexposed. So what I can do is I can pivot quickly, right? So when you're stuck with 10 projects, all your money's tied up there. You can't pivot.
Yeah.
You're handcuffed. So for me, like, if the market completely like fell off a cliff tomorrow, I could pivot my service to maybe, okay, oh, the market's going down. Okay, now there's distress selling. Maybe how can I help the buyer that's coming in with cash from Dubai or New York to pick up so there you can kind
Yeah.
of pivot and go with what's going on in the market at a faster pace versus when you're stuck to a project, it's going to go as fast as the project's going to go and eventually going to sell, right? So that's also one thing I like about my business is that even though it's tied to real estate and real estate has to be doing well in theory for me to have my best years, but there's also ways for me to make money in downturns within real estate for my services because I can still offer consulting in a down market for someone to navigate into how to get into investing during that time or how to get out of their properties during that time. So I think again it's a little bit more of a recession-proof model being services based strictly just investing.
That is so smart because you always hear things with real estate and it's market dependent in that type of sense. Like, oh, if it's down, like you're screwed. If you're in the middle of a deal, you're screwed. So
Especially in the middle of a deal.
yes, yeah, like what you said, you're handcuffed. Like
Yeah.
you've already put your money in, you've
Yeah,
already
you can't change
invested.
anything.
Especially
Yeah.
if you've got other investors, you're with other people's money now too.
Yeah,
So you can't even
responsible.
exactly. You're the responsible party. So I think that's really smart. What you're like going down into this.
Yeah, it just, I mean, for me, like, you can, it's tempting, right? Because a year and a half ago, I was still buying a lot of development sites, and you can make 300, 500 grand per house, and if you're doing like I was doing luxury homes, and sometimes I get sent a lot, that I'm like, oh, I should buy that. It's tempting because it's somewhat easier money because I'm very good at it now, and it's kind of autopilot for me for those projects, assuming that the market stays good. But at the same time, like, my company now, the new one's about a year old now, and the first year did 2.5 million. We're filming this, I guess today, March 1st, and we've already done 1.5 million this year. So
Wow.
like in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm making less than I did in my good years, but also I have to think about it. This is a brand new company, right?
Yeah.
So like, if I on this pace, I'll do around 5 to 7 this year probably, if I were to guess, if things continue where it's going now. So now I'm back to the level that I was doing before on year 2, but now what's year 3? Is it 20 million? Like so to me, it's one of those things like I need to not be greedy in the sense that like it's taking the easy money, which nothing's ever easy, but for me easier because I'm familiar with doing the development and flips or buying distressed multifamily. But trying to be patient and like again, my whole focus was to build a business. So trying to go navigate through that has been tough because last year, even though we did 2.5, the first 6 months we did 0 or negative basically. I was
Wow.
spending
Okay.
money. I had to hire staff, payroll, marketing, had to get the word out there, and we had a lot of planting seeds right with clients and nothing. The first 6 months pretty much nothing. And all of a sudden like they started hitting right. So the back 6 months we made 2.5 pretty much, which was great. But again, I wasn't paying myself. I had a lot of money out. And I had deals that I was like passing on that I would normally buy in a heartbeat. So I've been trying to stay true to and I have veered off a little bit. Like last year, I bought 2 properties because I was just like, it's like a drug, right? You're like, okay, I need to buy this. But the good thing is when you have income from a different business, which I never had before, right? I had my cash flow from my properties and then whatever I made on the flips or development. I never had like working capital coming in from another business. So it's allowed me to be pickier now. So like, before I'd buy deals that, would make money, but they're maybe a little tighter than I wanted, but I wanted to stay active and busy. Now I'm able to be more selective. So like I bought 2 last year and they both did very well. And so I bought 2 home runs, right? Everyone's like, oh, you want to buy a home run? But usually you have to buy a lot to get a home run. So
What is a home run?
home run, like
Like
investment.
okay.
Yeah, like baseball analogy. But like most flips in a Tampa market, you're gonna make probably 25 to 40 grand. Like, is a good flip, and you're not gonna get rich off that. Right? You have to do a lot of volume. So home run might be like you make 200 grand in one flip, right?
Okay.
So like, and you like, every so often you're gonna have those, and sometimes people get them like really early in their career, like, oh, this is so easy, and then what happens is they do the next flip and they lose all of it, right?
Right.
Or the things like the TV shows. But usually, every 20 flips you get one that's like, oh wow, we just killed it. But I was allowed to only pick those ones because I was saying no to the other 19 before then that I normally would buy. So I was being more selective. And then, this year I bought capitalizing. It sucks, but the hurricanes, right? So I capitalized. I bought 2 lots for development because it'd be dumb not to. Like it was almost like I'm not buying, but also this was almost like I bought a lot in Davis Island for 350 grand under market. I bought a
Wow.
lot in Snell Isle, which is a very equivalent neighborhood in St. Pete, for 350 grand under market. So these are things that I'm not as much as I want to stay focused, I'm also not stupid, right?
Yeah.
So like, but yeah, I'm mainly focused on the business, and sure, if a home run comes, I'm gonna buy it. So yeah, it's been a weird transition period for me, but mainly focusing on long term vision of like, okay, 5 years from now, what is my goal? And 5 years from now, my goal is to probably be in, I'm already in Tampa, but like Miami, San Diego, New York City, potentially overseas, because a lot of the investors that are coming into Miami market, for example, are not from the U.S. So tapping into other markets potentially. So like, I'm just trying to put the pieces in place now. And I know that if I keep getting sidetracked with projects, it won't ever come to that. So I'm just trying to be really strict with it.
Okay, that makes sense. And then and when you say those different areas, like living there, or
No,
like
my
establishing your business
Yeah,
in all of
expanding
those
right now.
markets? Okay.
So physical presence, obviously in Tampa area. So we service like 100 miles each direction, like physically, because I can drive there and be there.
Yep.
And we have our staff is here. And we like we're now we have a client in Miami, so like I'll fly there once a week. It's an easy flight, but we're not really in those markets necessarily. I don't have offices there. I don't have like marketing there necessarily, or a big presence. But I know that this type of, again, going back to like picking a company or company type that's scalable, consulting and a more detailed version of that. So we're a owners rep company,
Okay.
and owners rep is very prevalent in the commercial space. So we're in Tampa. Jeff Vinnick, Bill Gates owns Water Street. One on it, Jeff sold his shares, but they're not real estate guys, right? Bill is tech and Jeff is finance, but they have a lot of money. So very common in the commercial space where the developers have a lot of money, know nothing about real estate. So what they do is they hire a third-party fiduciary. They're called an owner's rep, and they're pretty much the big brother in the transaction to be the middleman between the developer and the contractors, the designers, the city, and they protect the best interest of the developer.
Oh.
So that's what we do for residential. It's not very common, especially in secondary markets. Like we're actually the only company that I can find online that does it in Tampa for residential. There's a company like Miami that does it for only for homes that are like $40 million plus for very ultra wealthy people because they don't want to deal with anything, right? They're CEOs and they're busy. So I know that this model works here in Tampa because we're one of one, but you don't. I can say I'm the biggest company in Tampa for this, but like that's not really a big achievement. That's no shame on Tampa, but like you want to go into markets that it's more in demand, right? So like the type of client that we have here are very wealthy people, like doctors, attorneys, people that own businesses that don't have the time nor the knowledge or both to take on a project. So like we have, for example, like right now we have the top neurosurgeon in Florida as a client. We have brothers that own like a dozen practices, doctors' offices. Like so, like these guys are really busy with their career, right? But there's only so many people that are wealthy in Tampa. Again, not to knock Tampa, but there's besides the athletes, you take the Lightning guys out and the Bucks guys out.
Yeah.
There's not many like, it's more of a blue collar city. You go to Miami or New York or San Diego or LA, there's probably like I don't want to say thousands of, but there's probably hundreds of thousands of people. Like I think Miami has, they eclipse 100,000 millionaires.
Yeah.
Like, and obviously a millionaire doesn't mean you're wealthy, but like,
But in that bracket.
yeah. So like clientele. So like I don't want to be in those markets that it makes sense to them, right? So like if I pitch someone that makes 80 grand a year, hey, we're gonna take off all this work off your plate and we're gonna charge X, they're like, oh, I'll just do it myself because they have nothing else going on and they don't have the money to pay us, right? So I go to Miami and I go to a guy that's like has an e-commerce business and he's yacht sales and these guys that are super entrepreneurial in Miami, they don't have the time. They're like, okay, I'm gonna pay you this. I'm still gonna make money on the property and the investment. Easy sell, right? So yeah, to answer your question, it's more so picking markets that have the type of clientele we need or want to scale, and it's definitely gonna be the Miami, New York, San Diego, LA, and again back overseas. So like most of the money coming into Miami, for example, the majority of it that are buying is actually foreign money.
Yeah.
And these people definitely need our services because they're not here.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then I guess to kind of pivot a bit, but is there anything, like, was there a deal or something that you ever did that you were like, holy shit, like I just got like either screwed or you just like lost a ton of money or you were like, should have never done this or somebody screwed you? Like, do you want to share a story?
I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure many. So for 10 years straight, never lost any money. So that was, I got screwed plenty of times during that time and had to figure out ways not to lose money. But what I had learned during that, like in general, like looking back, it's like when I had complete control over it and it wasn't market dictated or politically dictated, I always figured out a way. I'm very good at problem solving. That's probably my strongest suit. One of them, at least I'd say top three. But when things are out of your control, there's only so much you can do, right? And no one saw what happened with COVID and the rates and all that kind of stuff. It just, even like the top analysts in the world didn't see it because they're all just as screwed as us. And like, I mean,
no, nobody saw that.
Freddie Mac right now just eclipsed the same amount of defaults as '08.
Oh, wow.
And Freddie Mac is government tracking for government-backed debt. And a lot of people that use government-backed debt are institutions, much smarter people than I am that are in that class. So like, no one really saw it coming. So the biggest thing that my biggest mistake that I made was thinking that it would work. It would like work itself out faster, I guess, because no one knew how long COVID was gonna last. No one knew if rates are gonna come back down, right? So like, not really, I guess, being too aggressive with my underwriting, I guess, in some cases. So my deal that I would love to take back, that definitely is maybe the biggest loss in my career is I bought an apartment complex in Dallas, 32 units, and we bought it in a very low income, Class C type neighborhood, which is our bread and butter, but it's also 15 minutes from downtown Dallas. And like the idea was, okay, this is gonna be a 5-year project, 5-year hold. That by year 5, like they announced Top Golf is being built like 2 blocks away. Like we're banking on these things to happen. And then we bought this in 2021 when the market was the best ever in history, literally factually. Like since I've been tracking it, 21 was the best real estate market ever. So we're geniuses. We bought a good property. We got a great rate. This area is about to blow up, and then all of a sudden everything changed. Right, 2022 rates started increasing. 2023 rates literally tripled from the lows, and that Top Golf that was going in a few blocks away pulled out because now it didn't make sense for the market. The economy was weakened. Construction debt was too expensive. A lot of other projects in that area that were being cleaned up, and then lower income people became even lower income, right?
Yeah.
So like it was one of those things that just because it worked before and we thought that it was like a sure thing, it was not. And not to say that I didn't make any mistakes, but that was more like out of our control, right? We can't control the rates of the market. We can't control Top Golf pulling out, like all these different things. But what I learned though is during that time is how do you underwrite to have downside protection no matter what happens in the market? And Class C real estate does very well in a good market, does very well in a bad market, but it doesn't do well in an indecisive market. It's a difference right now. So everyone doesn't know what's going on right now. So you can't really classify us in a bad market right now or a good market because everyone has different opinions. So it's kind of a wait and see. Everyone's kind of waiting to see, like every month Jerome Powell speaks and then everyone's like on the tip of their tongue, and they're waiting for inflation data to come out, CPI data every month. So it's kind of like this weird, I've never seen in my career. I've never seen it such no one knows what direction we're going. Are we going to a recession? Are we about to explode? It's all these different things. And then you got like tariffs come in. Now people are like, now they're scared again. And it's like, so it's one of those weird things. So a lot of people are on hold because of that.
Yeah.
So this investment, we doubled the rents. We did everything we said we were going to do. And then we got stuck with a property that is we can't sell because who's buying it, right? It's the problem is debt's too much. There's no upside now, immediate upside in the area because everything that was going on has pulled out of that area. And no one wants to take on a property that they're not sure which direction it's going to go. So like that's partially why I stopped investing too. Like I figure like, why buy unless you're gonna hold forever. If you're like a Warren Buffett type investor and you have like a really high paying job, if you're like a neurosurgeon and you make 800 grand a year and you want to just keep buying properties and it's not it's just more for your kids or whatever, like that's fine. That's actually investing if I would call it that. But that's not how you're gonna make money. Like that guy already has his money coming in from the doctors, right?
Yeah.
So going back to why I pulled out, like investments like that were like the lesson learned. I'm like, you know what? Even when I make all the right decisions, I bought a good deal, good market, good rate, good price, all that, and I still get fucked over, right? So I'm like, why would I continue to do this? Because for every, not enough control. I want to have as much control over my business as possible. Even if the market or the government comes in and changes something, I can still pivot. Versus when you own that asset back to the development, just like when you own a apartment complex, it's still dead weight until you sell. It's not like a stock where you can push sell on your phone app, right? You have to find a buyer.
Yeah.
And so that was the biggest thing that I mean, I don't know what we still own it. I still own it. It's,
Okay.
but we'll see what it's gonna be a big loss if we were to sell it. We might just keep holding it. But the problem is going back to that. It's like we have millions of dollars. It's a big deal. Millions of dollars tied in that deal. So it's dead money, which is losing money. We're not getting return on it. Inflation's high, and we're just sitting there waiting to see what happens. And for all we know, we sell it tomorrow, we take a loss, and then 6 months from now, rates drop down to 4% because we're in a recession. Which recession is bad for a lot of things, but good for real estate a lot of times. It's this weird because rates, rates will drop if you go into a recession, and that's what the Fed has always done in the years past. And it's funny, people are like, well, who's going to buy real estate if there's a recession? A lot of people do. That's why people get rich. Same reason why Warren Buffett made all his money. He bought almost all of his wealth was generated after '08 when he bought a lot of stocks and companies at lower valuations because he had cash. So the rich get richer, right? It's funny because like I almost want the recession-ish, just because I think it'd be good for my business in the short term. Which is funny because last time there was a cycle, like in 2020, when there was a recession happening, the stock market was crashing because of COVID and everything was going crazy. I was not wealthy enough to have that mindset. I was more like, I need the market to go back up, right? Now it's like, yeah, go in the red because red creates panic. Panic creates rates to drop down, and then that becomes less debt, less expensive money to borrow money and scale your business or in investments. But until that happens, I think the real estate market stays very flat and gradually continues to go down. So, and it's not good for anyone that owns real estate.
Yeah. I mean, especially here in Florida, I feel like everything is extremely inflated right now. So, maybe we'll have some course correction.
Yeah, it's happening slowly. It already has. I mean, we're probably 25% off the top of 2021. It's very, like, people really, like, don't notice it because it's very gradual. And depends on like what headlines you read. Like everyone has a different opinion, but if you actually look at the data, days on market, price drops, and what's actually selling. So a lot of homes are sitting on the market at a high price, and like, everyone's like, "Oh, the stock it's still maintaining." But you have to look at what's actually selling. It's much lower than the highs of 21. So it's very gradual. And even deals that are selling for close to value, a lot of times you don't know the details of it. A lot of times, if you actually saw the closing statement, you'd see there's a big closing credit from the seller. There's a rate buy down. Like they're giving a lot of incentives that, even though the sticker price keeps data up high, a lot of times there's more detail to it. So I think we're going to stay in that same boat of it's slowly declining until something happens to the rates. I mean, the reality is rates, especially for the everyday consumer, like if you are making 100 grand a year, and 3 years ago you could buy a house that's 600 grand. Now you're buying a house that's 340, and you're getting shot at because in the ghetto. So you're going to stay in your rental property, right? So it really deters buyers, especially the younger generation, millennials and younger, to go from the rental that they can afford and they don't have to worry about any liabilities or maintenance, and then they go into the buy-in. So I think until rates probably drop at least into the low fives, I don't think we're going to see too much movement especially in the residential market.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And then before we kind of wrap up, I wanted to ask, do you have any advice that you'd like to give people if they're interested in going into real estate? And then also, I know we were talking a little bit about...
Don't get into it, right? Yeah.
I know we were talking also a little bit about like work-life balance. So if you want to kind of explain how you maintain that, and then any kind of like final
Yeah,
advice.
I mean,
thoughts.
advice. I guess advice. I mean, like I said, I got in when there wasn't much people like there wasn't influencers or podcasts or Instagram for that kind of stuff. So like I would say, if you're getting into it, I would find a mentor. Like if you can find someone, even if you have to pay for that mentor, coaching or whatever, I would do that because like all the mistakes I made and like it took me years and years to figure out not to buy residential. If I had someone like me that tell a kid now is 25, maybe by year one he's in a commercial already or he's doing other things, right? So like. Uh, Invest in things that can speed up your learning curve. I would say that's advice. Doesn't matter if it's either one-on-one coaching or consulting, or you're going to conferences once a month, whatever it is. Get in the right rooms, ask questions, and just don't buy things just because your friend bought a house and you're like, oh, I need to buy a house. Like, don't compare yourself to people that are not way above you. Again, when you're a kid, you're playing sports. You want to be Tom Brady. You don't want to be some guy that's like playing high school football, right?
Right.
So cling on to people that are giving you advice that have already done it or at the top. And then what I would say is you have to have a really like short memory. I would say I went back to my top skill is like I would say problem solving, short memory, and having like a savage type mindset. And the short memory thing means that no matter how good or bad something happens, you have to have just like snap back into it. So I used to have a rule. When I played hockey was at midnight. So you have a game, play at 7 p.m. You have a great game or bad game. Usually, showered out of the arena by 10. So you have 2 hours between midnight. And if you have a really bad game and you have a game the next night and you let it carry over the next day, guess what? You're a mental midget and you're gonna have a bad game again. It happens 3 times, you're cut. Like it's very cutthroat in professional sports. Just like if you have a really good game and you let it get to your head and now you start making sloppy mistakes the next game because you think you're hot shit, right? And so I always had that mindset of okay, take either whatever if it's a bad game, watch game film and figure out why, and then that's it, move on. Same thing with good games. Same thing in business. So you have a deal that makes a lot of money, go buy lunch, buy dinner, whatever, celebrate. But like the next day, right back to business. Just like if you take a big loss, like figure out why you took a loss and move on. I think that's probably the biggest advice I would say is like you have to have a short memory, especially in the beginning because you're gonna have a lot of losses and you're gonna figure out you're gonna like be spinning your wheels a lot in the beginning, thinking that you should have faster results. I don't know. It doesn't matter if you're gonna be an investor, or realtor, or wholesaler. Like unless you get super lucky, the odds of you making good money in the first 6 months of the year probably not going to be there. So if that's not for you, then don't get in real estate, right? You have to have at least a ramp up period of whatever you're going to do. And then our question was
like work-life balance,
work-life
like
travel. Yeah.
Because I feel like with a lot of entrepreneurs, everyone's like, there's just so much like of a hustle culture and work hard, which I'm not disagreeing with, but I feel like you kind of have to live your life and you kind of get to do both. So
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. Like I know people that are like don't even like traveling. Like I have a good friend of mine that does really well. Like he does not. Vacation to him is like work.
Yeah. Like they have no enjoyment.
Yeah, like he'd rather just have the Saturday Sunday on the couch and like eat Doritos like that, whatever. So like for me, it's I get I'm very intense like on the day to day, and you can ask someone that's that knows me, works with me. Like I use words like savage, I'm cutthroat. Like I don't like it's to me it's I can be best ones to you, but if it's business related, like I don't care, right? So that can be draining, exhausting over long periods of time. To be always on. Doesn't matter if it's a weekend or nighttime. I'm always like thinking work mode. So for me, travel is more of a getaway, mental getaway. So I'll do like 3 months straight, a quarter of just like no days off. I work on Saturday, Sundays, on evenings. Like I'll be at dinner and I'm still emailing. Like it's just I'm always on. And then I'll say, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go away for 3-4 days, and I do my best not to be on my phone or computer, which sometimes doesn't work that way. But it's just a mental getaway. So that's why I view it. And then for also why travel versus just like driving to Orlando or whatever. Like to me, I have to get out of my comfort zone. I have to get into culture shock. Like I need to be out of my element to really drop my shoulders and relax. So that's kind of where travel came in for me. And I also like Anthony Bourdain. Like I think obviously he passed away now, but like I think he had one of the coolest jobs ever, where he would pretty much travel to places that were unearthed, like just places. He wasn't going to Paris, no, and like he was going to places that had to take a donkey up the mountain to eat, right? So like to me that always intrigued me when I was growing up, because I never vacationed or traveled really as a kid or teenager. In my early years, my adult years, I didn't have the money, so I really get off on like going to places and getting like true culture shock and like being like where am I? What am I doing? And that really helps clear my head, because if you go somewhere and you land and you see a Hilton hotel, you see a Starbucks coffee, like it's you might be excited it's a vacation, but like to me it's not enough for me. Like, but if I go to like Hanoi in Vietnam and I'm taking like a 1976 Harley Davidson as my taxi in the back with no helmet on, and they drop me off, and I'm sitting on a paint bucket for lunch. Like, these are things that you're like, it just naturally for me, it just like clears my head and like lets me immerse myself into that culture or wherever I'm at. And then I come back and I'm hungry again. And so that's where travel comes in for me. My goal also, which we'll see where I'm kind of behind now, but by 40, my goal is to visit every country in the world.
Oh, wow.
And I'm at 60-ish, and there's 195, 197 countries in the world. So I've had to probably get a little busier here soon. Also, it's tough because a lot of the countries that, like Iraq, I'm not,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's somewhere you're
yeah,
like, I'm not.
but I'm at the
gonna-
event. It's a promise to myself. So at some point, hopefully, it's safe for North Korea. I don't know. Like there's places that are gonna be a little bit difficult to go to. But yeah, for me, it's fun. It's a getaway for me, and it's important to me. But I don't really believe in work-life balance, like in the truest sense of like you need to have time off and like time with like. I think if you want to actually have a really good business, doesn't matter what it is, you have to be always on.
Yeah.
You mean, and then for me, it's like pick and choose when you're going to be off. But like, the true sense of work-life balance of like, people want to like go work remote and like travel Europe with their boyfriend and like, live this Instagram like TikTok lifestyle. If you do that, your business is going to fail. You can't be away that long, in my opinion, especially in your growth years. If you're, Ken Griffin, CEO of Citadel, then yeah, he can go and hang out on the south of France for the next 20 years and his business won't change, right?
Yeah.
But if you are my age, younger, in your what I call your earning years, if you want to go fuck off like that, you're gonna pay the price for it. So the balance for me is more so just like, okay, what's good for my health, mental health, and business that brings me back better, versus like if I'm just trying to be greedy and selfish and being there just because I want to like have time off. That's the difference, I think.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of picturing it though, because I think that really it gives you that mental clarity and that mental peace, and you're still able to come back stronger. And I think, that's kind of because I know what you mean. There's no full balance, but you got to do the things that you need to help bring you back stronger also. So
100%.
yeah. All right. Well, I love that. I think that was great. I think we're
Yeah, it was
up
probably a
time.
long one. I don't know.
No, that was great. That was amazing. So John, thank you so much for
Yeah, thanks for
coming, for
having me.
sharing all of these things. This was really insightful because we've had a couple of real estate people so far, and I think
Yeah.
what your perspective and your experience, it's been really fascinating. So
Cool, I appreciate you having
thank
us.
you for
Yeah,
your
neat.
time. Appreciate it.
Yeah.